Hi, I'm Joe Harding. I'm a Republican candidate for state representative for District 22. I've never run for office and not a politician. I have 4 children. My wife Amanda and I have been married for 8 years. We have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 11-month-old. And never thought I would run for office. But in 2018, the governor's race in Florida really woke me up to where we were heading as a country and a state. Almost 50% of Floridians voted for Andrew Gillum, who was, at that time, he was a self-proclaimed socialist running for governor. And it woke me up to the need in our state that we had for conservative fighters, and I decided that I needed to run for state representative and to try to do everything I could to defend the Florida I love and the Florida I care about for my kids and for future generations. I'm a 7th-generation Floridian. I was born and raised on a small farm in Williston by my mom and dad. My dad's been a Baptist pastor in Williston for over 47 years. And my mom and him had 11 children, homeschooled almost all of us. And really, I learned the value of hard work and dedication from them, watching my dad raise 11 kids on a pastor salary. But he did that all while loving and caring for others, and it gave me that desire to serve and help others where I could. I went on and had a career in construction management. I've managed over $400 million worth of commercial construction projects all over the state of Florida, actually all the way up into the northeast part of the country as far as Virginia. And during that time, I learned how to manage multi-million-dollar budgets, how to create jobs through keeping jobs going in tough times, how to keep a budget on track, and how to turn a project around when it got backwards or upside down. And those are the needs that I think we have right now in the legislature. We need folks who have a fight, a grit, know what it's like to sign the front of a paycheck and make payroll, and have a business experience, and can bring that to the state legislature. Every issue that we face in our country at the national level filters down and it's implemented at the state level, whether it's the right to defend the life of the unborn, whether it's our Second Amendment right, whether it's the role of government in our education, the role of government in our business. And that's where my priorities are clear. I said it the first time I spoke over 20 months ago when I started my campaign. My number one priority is defending the life of the unborn. I will always do that. I'm not going to compromise on that. Number 2 will be defending our Second Amendment rights and ensuring that government, we stop compromising as Republicans on that issue and draw a line and make it clear that that's an issue we're not going to compromise on. Number 3 priority for me is vocational training and programs in our high schools. We have a need. We've got to come up with a plan how we're going to prepare our children, that are students that do not go to college, the 40% of high school graduates that don't go to college, what we're doing to prepare them for the workforce. And I have the experience to be able to talk about that issue, and that's an issue that's passionate and close to my heart. So I need your vote on August 18th. Well, right now as we sit, I would say the most pressing issue that faces our state is going to be the recovery of COVID. I believe a limited role of government, and I think this is an area that we're going to have to make a decision in the legislature. I look forward to being part of that voice, because we can either say that government is the answer to all our problems and continue to put ourselves further in debt, or we figure out how do we partner with the private sector to get government out of the way, allow business owners to do what they do best, which is to innovate and improvise. And I'm concerned about liability for small business owners that are trying to get their employees to come back. I'm concerned about COVID chaser attorneys who are going to go after employers. So I think there's a lot of areas there that I'm very concerned about with COVID. I don't support tax increases of any kind, because I don't think that during an economic downfall, more taxes are the answer. I believe in lower taxes. I would say specifically for small business owners, an area that we need to address is the business rent tax. And right now, if you own a business and then you rent it, or you own a building and then you rent that building to your business, we're requiring that you pay a business rent tax. That's an area that I think is ridiculous. It's a double tax, and I don't support it. I'm going to support legislation to repeal that. That is an area for small business owners. But for the average citizen, I think the number one thing we have to look at is, do we want less government or more government? And my response is always going to be less government and fewer taxes. So I don't support any tax increases, whether they're called COVID response or anything else. I believe right now, I think our education system is funded sufficiently, but not always spent adequately. And what I mean by that is, I think that I support school choice. I support voucher systems and voucher programs for students to go into Christian schools or private schools where possible. The public education system has a very important role in our country, and I support that. But I'm also concerned about bureaucracy. I'm concerned about wasteful spending. And I'll bring, as a builder, I'll bring a perspective to that and make sure that we're holding our budget dollars accountable. Our infrastructure in many of our local schools need improvements, and I'll support that improvements, but I want to make sure it's done correctly and we're using our tax dollars wisely. And so that's an area that I look forward to bringing some real world experience to. So again, I'm asking for your vote on August 18th in the Republican primary, and then again on November 3rd in the general election. I'm running because I think that we need candidates who have real world experience, who sign the front of a paycheck, and have skin in the game. I believe owning a small business and raising 4 children here, putting them through our schools, is enough skin in the game to make sure that I'm staying true to my core values, that I'm protecting the life of the unborn, that I'm defending our constitutional rights, and I'm making sure that government is remaining as small as possible and out of the way as much as possible. I always have an open door policy as your next state representative. I believe in transparency. I look forward to being as available as a representative can be as your next state representative, and I look forward to working with small business owners across the district, including Denellen, and making sure that we're protecting our natural resources like the Rainbow River.
Good morning. I am Russ Randall. I am a candidate for the District 22 House of Representatives, and I'd love to just say a great thank you to the Denellen Chamber here for providing this venue and this opportunity in the day of our pandemic, the coronavirus. Certainly things have changed, and so we hope that you'll be able to utilize this format in your making your decision for the candidates who will represent you in the times to come. I moved to Denellen area almost 35 years ago now. My wife and I set up housekeeping here, and this has become home to us, a place that is dear to our hearts, beautiful, and what a blessing it is to be able to live here in District 22 and to be able to work and just worship here in District 22 as well. For the first 12 years in which I was here, I taught agriculture at Denellen High School. I had one of the greatest memories of my life, just working with students, having the opportunity to lean into their lives some. Still to this day, many years later, have many of those students who are still great friends of mine, who will check in with us from time to time, and so it was just a treasured time. Went from there to Denellen Christian Academy. My wife and I joined First Baptist Church of Denellen when we moved here, and were active during my time at Denellen High School as well. In the midst of that, the school had grown fairly considerably there at the church, and so the church asked me if I would consider coming on and being a full-time administrator there at Denellen Christian Academy. And so for the next 12 years, that was my position, my role. And again, what a blessing it was to be able to lean into the lives of boys and girls. I found that working with teenagers in the high school and working with the little ones at the Christian school, there was a lot of similarities in those things, a lot of opportunity to have influence in the lives of others. And so it was a true blessing for me. The last 11 plus years now, my office moved about 60 feet. I have become the pastor of First Baptist Church, and once again, a treasure for me to be able to do that. It has been such a great blessing for me to be there and be a part of that ministry process. Many have asked, why do you want to enter into politics? And I'm simply saying this right here. I have a desire to serve. I believe that God has called us to be a part of this, and we want to be able to do that well. We want to be able to represent District 22 and to be able to go to Tallahassee and hopefully have influence for those conservative values that I believe most of us still hold true to. Almost a year ago, I had the opportunity to meet with John McKay, who is a former president of the Florida Senate. And I asked him this question: what do you believe is the most pressing need that Florida is going to have? And his answer somewhat surprised me. He said, I believe that it's going to be a financial need. One of the issues that I think every state probably is struggling with, and when you look at the pandemic and all the things that have been caused there, I don't think there's any question, Mark, that one of the greatest issues that we as a state are going to face is the finances of that state. Florida has a requirement for a balanced budget, and I believe that each year that's going to get more and more difficult. Our governor this past few weeks ago cut $1 billion from the budget, which in the big picture is not a lot of money, but it's $1 billion. Can you imagine? I believe that we're going to have to be quite creative on how we find funding for all the things that we want to be able to have here in Florida. When we think about how we will fund our budget, there's only one word that is the answer to that, and it's taxes. And so you sit back and you think, all right, what do we need to do with taxes? I will say to you that I am a proponent of lesser government, lesser taxes, less regulations in our lives. We need to be able to make it easier, not harder, for small business people to be able to run their business and to be able to invest back into their business. I believe that one of the best ways that we perhaps can raise revenue is to look at some type of fair tax, some type of consumption tax, and then that way it gives a broader appeal. We have the 1 cent sales tax here in Marion County. I believe that's probably an appropriate way because it is a pay-as-you-use, and I believe that that is probably one of the best ways for us to do that. I am opposed to higher taxes. Let's find a way that we can all contribute without encroaching on any one area. Educational funding in our society is one of those questions that everyone probably has a different opinion on, depending on what you think about that. I am a proponent for parent choice. I believe that our public school education system is a necessity and that they do a great job. I believe that we need to adequately fund that, at the same time giving parents the opportunity to choose what they believe is the best venue for their students, their children. Knowing what their bent in life is, and then being able to choose a school that best suits that, rather than having to go to one that is just a geographical definition of their home school. I believe that the legislator has and will continue to take a hard look at these things, trying to determine how do we best fund education. I don't think there's any doubt in any of our minds that that is an important thing in our budget here in the state of Florida. I want to thank you for just taking a moment to watch these videos today. And again, I want to say thanks to the Dunellen Chamber for providing this out there. Again, my name is Russ Randall. I have lived in District 22 now for 34 plus years. I know this area well. I have a servant's heart, and I desire to serve you in Tallahassee. I will bring maturity to Tallahassee. I will bring experience to Tallahassee, and I will bring a dedicated voice to you as we serve and represent you well here in this District 22 area. Again, I ask that you vote for me. Consider me as you cast your vote if you have not already. Russ Randall, that is the Florida House Race, District 22. Thank you for your time today.
Hi, my name is Barbara Byram, and I'm running for Florida House District 22. My brother and I attended high school together. This was more than a few years ago. I was a freshman when he was a senior. That year, he took a very public stance against the federal government, actively protesting in the city where we lived and wearing a protest symbol at school. A number of teachers threatened to quit if the principal didn't reprimand my brother, but the principal refused. Some of my teachers, who had also taught my brother, started harassing me about his political activity. And then the media heaped attention on our family, and hateful letters began flooding our mailbox. My brother received death threats, and I received threats of violence and rape, even though I was not involved. When one of the national TV news programs called asking my brother for an interview, we had a family meeting. My brother wanted to do the interview, but because of the threats, my parents thought he should decline. My brother thought it was because our dad didn't agree with his stance, but Dad talked about taking responsibility for the consequences to me of my brother's protest. When my brother pushed Dad about agreement, Dad said, "I don't have to agree with your viewpoint to agree that the Constitution guarantees your right to free speech." Those words affected me profoundly. They justified my anger at both the teachers who had harassed me and those people who had sent me threatening letters anonymously. I realized that I had rights as well, and I became politically active as a result. That was 50 years ago. Over those 5 decades, I've worked on many campaigns. I've talked with some of you about stopping the move to privatize our postal service and instead restoring it, or about how universal healthcare can deliver better services to all of us at lower costs. Some of you may have signed petitions I've helped circulate, including funding our land and water conservation here in Florida. But the issue I've worked on longest is making government responsive to the people, not just to the corporations and the wealthy. I'm a patriot. I believe deeply in the words of our Declaration of Independence, that we are all equally endowed with the same rights, and that those rights are secured to us by a government operating with our consent. But our state legislature is not operating with our consent beyond the single vote we cast once every 2 years. The legislative session is so compressed that we can't know what's being voted on. We deserve to hear from our legislators, and we deserve time to read and weigh in on legislation before it's voted on. That's why I'm running for office. I'm Barbara Byram. Thank you. So the most pressing need, I think, is the most obvious, and that's the current global pandemic. Florida in particular has become the hotspot, not just of our nation, but of the world. In terms of what's most pressing right now for the people of Florida is some kind of extension of stimulus payments, unemployment payments. If we don't keep money circulating through our local economy, it will end up closing more businesses and costing more jobs. It also leaves people without health insurance. Right now, it's 25% of Floridians have no health insurance because of COVID. So in terms of taxes in Florida, I think it's extremely important, and especially right now because businesses are shuttered or only operating part-time, it's extremely important for the state of Florida to change over from the regressive sales and use tax to the more progressive income tax. This will help balance out some of the loss we're going to be feeling over the next couple of years from COVID. Past legislative session, one of our legislators boasted about how our budget for education is the highest it's ever been, and that is a fact. We are spending more dollars now than we ever have in the past. But when you look at the rate per student, given inflation, we're spending less now than we did 20 years ago per student in this state. The most important thing, I think, at this point in terms of what the people need here in the state of Florida is a change in the way legislation happens here. Currently, our session is only 4 months long. Last year alone, more than 3,700 bills were introduced in that session. 200 came out the other end. 4 months is not enough time to consider the legislation, nor is it enough time to give people the opportunity to find out what's being introduced and what's being voted on.